Did you know there are tiny creatures living on this planet that can hijack an animal's brain, take over its body and force it to commit suicide? These mind-controlling parasites don't just exist in sci-fi movies. They're real, they're everywhere, and they're creating zombie animals right under our noses. Imagine waking up one day to find your mind is no longer yours. Your body moves against your will, marching you straight toward danger while you're fully conscious but completely powerless to stop it. This nightmare is reality for thousands of species across the planet. Before I show you how these microscopic puppet masters create real-life zombies, drop a comment with the creepiest animal fact you've ever heard. Is it possible these mind controllers are already among us? What if I told you there's a fungus that can take over an ant's brain, force it to leave its colony, climb to a specific height on a plant, and then lock its jaws onto a leaf vein in a death grip? This isn't science fiction. It's the Ophiocordyceps unilateralis fungus, better known as the zombie ant fungus. Here's the truly terrifying part. The infected ant is conscious during this entire process. Scientists have discovered that the fungus doesn't actually destroy the ant's brain. Instead, it surrounds it with fungal cells and manipulates the muscles directly, like a puppeteer pulling strings. The ant experiences everything while having zero control over its own body. The fungus forces the ant to climb to the perfect height, not too high, not too low, where the temperature and humidity are ideal for fungal growth. It makes the ant bite down on the underside of a leaf with such force that its jaw locks in a death grip that remains even after the ant dies. Then comes the most alien part. A fungal stalk erupts from the ant's head, growing up to twice the length of the ant's body, before releasing spores to infect more ants below. Think about this. The fungus evolved this incredibly specific behavior to maximize its spread. It's like if a cold virus could force you to climb a ladder, lock your arms around a beam, and then use your body as a launch pad for more viruses. And this isn't rare. In some tropical forests, you can find graveyards with hundreds of zombie ants locked onto leaves, all killed by the same fungal puppeteer. Some scientists believe this fungus has been manipulating ants for at least 48 million years. That's way longer than humans have existed. But this mind-controlling fungus isn't even close to the most disturbing parasite we've discovered. Imagine a wasp that can turn a cockroach into a willing victim, a living food source, and eventually a nursery for its babies. The emerald jewel wasp doesn't just kill its prey. It performs precise brain surgery to create a zombie cockroach servant. When this metallic green wasp finds a cockroach, it delivers two incredibly precise stings. The first temporarily paralyzes the front legs. But it's the second sting that showcases nature's terrifying precision. The wasp inserts its stinger directly into a specific part of the cockroach's brain. This isn't random. The wasp targets an exact group of neurons that control the cockroach's escape response. And get this, the wasp's stinger has sensory receptors that help it navigate inside the cockroach's brain until it finds the perfect spot. It's like a neurosurgeon operating with a blindfold on, using only touch to find a specific region of the brain. After the sting, the cockroach doesn't die or become paralyzed. Instead, it enters a zombie-like state where it can still walk and respond to stimuli, but loses all motivation to escape or defend itself. The wasp then grabs the cockroach's antenna and leads it like a dog on a leash to the wasp's burrow. The wasp then lays an egg on the cockroach's abdomen, buries it alive in its den and flies away. When the wasp larva hatches, it chews into the still living cockroach and feeds on its organs in a specific sequence, saving the vital organs for last to keep the cockroach fresh and alive as long as possible. The cockroach remains alive for about 8 days while being eaten from the inside. The most disturbing part? The cockroach could actually escape this entire time. It remains physically capable of movement, but the brain manipulation removes all will to survive. It's not physically restrained, it's mentally enslaved. You might want to look at your pet cat differently after this. There's a microscopic parasite called Toxoplasma gondii that can only reproduce inside cats. But to complete its life cycle, it needs to move from one cat to another. So how does it do this? By manipulating the behavior of other animals, possibly including humans. When this parasite infects mice or rats, it does something utterly bizarre. It makes them attracted to cat urine instead of terrified by it. Even more specifically, it reverses their fear response only for cat odors, while leaving other fears intact. This isn't a general brain malfunction, it's a precise rewiring of the rodent's brain to make it more likely to be eaten by a cat. Scientists call this the fatal attraction phenomenon. The infected rodent actually becomes sexually attracted to the smell of its predator, actively seeking out areas marked by cats. It's like the parasite flips a switch in the rodent's brain, turning fear into desire. Now here's where it gets really concerning. This same parasite infects roughly 30–50% of humans worldwide. In most people, it causes no symptoms and remains dormant, but studies have found correlations between Toxoplasma infection and increased risk-taking behavior in humans. Some research suggests links to schizophrenia, suicidal behavior, and even specific personality traits. One study found that people involved in car accidents were more likely to have Toxoplasma infections than the general population. Another showed infected men were more likely to ignore rules and take risks, while infected women tended to be more outgoing and trusting. Is it possible that millions of people have their behavior subtly influenced by a parasite that wants them to get eaten by cats? The science isn't conclusive yet, but the possibility alone is enough to make you wonder about who or what is really making your decisions. If you've made it this far, you're clearly fascinated by these natural mind controllers. Drop a comment saying nature's scarier than fiction, so I know who's brave enough to stick around for the most disturbing parasites yet. And don't forget to hit subscribe to discover more of nature's darkest secrets. Picture this, a parasite that doesn't just control its host's mind, but actually replaces its reproductive organs, steals its identity, and tricks it into raising the parasite's children as if they were its own. This is exactly what the Saculina barnacle does to crabs, and it might be the most disturbing body snatcher in nature. The female Saculina larva finds a crab and injects itself into a gap in the crab's shell. Once inside, it grows root-like tendrils that spread throughout the crab's entire body, wrapping around every organ and eventually reaching the brain. But that's just the beginning of this horror story. If the crab is female, the parasite causes permanent infertility by destroying its reproductive system. If it's male, something even more sinister happens. The parasite feminizes the male crab, changing its behavior and even reshaping its body to resemble a female. The parasite then creates a bulge on the underside of the crab, where the crab's own egg sac would normally be. This bulge is actually the parasite's reproductive organ filled with Saculina eggs, not crab eggs. Here comes the truly diabolical part. The infected crab now cares for these parasite eggs as if they were its own offspring. The male crabs, now feminized, even perform the egg-carrying behaviors that only female crabs normally do. The parasite doesn't just control the crab's body, it rewires its parental instincts to benefit the parasite's children. When it's time for the parasite's eggs to hatch, the crab stands on high ground and waves its claws to release the parasite larvae into the water, the exact same behavior it would use for its own offspring. The crab has essentially become nothing more than a walking shell controlled by the parasite, nurturing and protecting the very thing that destroyed it. Some infected crabs live like this for years, unable to reproduce themselves but fully dedicated to raising generation after generation of the parasite that enslaved them. It's like something from a nightmare, except it's happening in oceans all around the world right now. Imagine you're a cricket or grasshopper going about your day, when suddenly you feel an overwhelming urge to find water and jump into it, even though you can't swim and will certainly drown. This isn't a random insect suicide. It's the work of the horsehair worm, a parasite that grows inside insects and then forces them to commit suicide by drowning so the parasite can escape into the water. The horsehair worm's life cycle is straight out of a horror movie. It starts when an insect accidentally ingests the parasite's microscopic larvae, often by drinking from contaminated water or eating an infected insect. Once inside, the larva develops and grows, feeding on the insect's tissues but carefully avoiding vital organs to keep its host alive. What happens next is where it gets truly disturbing. When the worm is ready to reproduce, which happens to be in water, it needs to escape its land-dwelling host, so it takes control of the insect's nervous system and manipulates its brain, creating an irresistible urge for the insect to find water and jump in. Scientists have discovered that these worms actually produce proteins that act on the insect's brain, much like neurotransmitters. They literally hijack the host's central nervous system, overwhelming it with signals that create a suicidal attraction to water. When the insect jumps into water and begins to drown, the fully grown worm, which can be up to 3 feet long despite being as thin as a horsehair, bursts out of the insect's body, often through the head or abdomen. The worm then swims away to find a mate, while the host, if not already dead from the trauma, drowns. What's particularly chilling about this parasite is how it creates what scientists call hydrophilic behavior, a love of water, in creatures that would normally avoid water at all costs. The insect's natural survival instincts are completely reversed, replaced with a compulsion that leads directly to its death. These worms are found on every continent except Antarctica, and there are over 350 species of them. Some scientists believe they may be one of the most common parasites on Earth, hiding in plain sight and manipulating the behavior of countless insects every day. Our final mind controller doesn't just manipulate the brain, it devours it. Naegleria fowleri, commonly known as the brain-eating amoeba, is a microscopic, single-celled organism that has a terrifying 97% fatality rate in humans. And unlike our other parasites, this one doesn't want to keep you alive. It wants to turn your brain into its dinner. This amoeba lives in warm, freshwater lakes, rivers, and hot springs. It enters the human body through the nose, typically when people are swimming or diving. What happens next is like a microscopic invasion straight out of a nightmare. The amoeba follows the olfactory nerves, the nerves that give you your sense of smell, traveling directly to the brain. Once there, it releases enzymes that dissolve brain tissue, which it then consumes, multiplying rapidly and causing massive inflammation and destruction. The truly terrifying part. The early symptoms mimic a common headache or flu, making it easy to miss until it's too late. By the time more severe symptoms appear, like hallucinations, seizures, and altered mental states, the amoeba has already begun feasting on the brain tissue. While this amoeba doesn't control behavior in the same way as our other parasites, it does something equally disturbing. It causes the infected person to experience confusion, personality changes, and hallucinations, as it literally eats their mind. In a way, it's still changing behavior, just through destruction rather than manipulation. What makes this organism particularly nightmarish is that once symptoms appear, death typically occurs within 5 days. Only a handful of people have ever survived infection, and many were left with permanent brain damage. There's currently no effective treatment, and by the time doctors typically diagnose it, it's often too late. The brain-eating amoeba doesn't need elaborate mind control. It simply destroys what makes you who you are, turning your thoughts, memories, and personality into food for its reproduction. It's a stark reminder that in nature, even our most precious organ, the source of our consciousness, can become just another meal for a microscopic predator. These mind-controlling parasites reveal a disturbing truth about nature. Our brains, the very center of who we are, can be hijacked, manipulated, or even consumed by organisms we can barely see. From fungi that turn ants into living launch pads to worms that drive insects to suicide, the natural world is filled with puppeteers pulling the strings of their unwilling hosts. The scariest part? We're still discovering new mind controllers every year. Scientists believe we've only identified a fraction of the parasites that exist on Earth. How many more are out there, silently manipulating the behavior of animals or even humans in ways we haven't yet recognized? If these real-life body snatchers fascinated you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, I'll show you animals with regenerative abilities, so incredible they might hold the key to human immortality. From creatures that can regrow their heads to animals that never age, you won't believe what evolution has created. Drop a comment letting me know which of these mind controllers freaked you out the most. And remember, the next time you feel a strange, unexplainable urge, you might want to ask yourself, is that really you thinking, or is something else pulling the strings?